I would like to call the May 8th, 2017 Board of Education meeting to order. The board has already met in executive session and saluted the flag, so with that we will start with a roll call, please.
Mr. Byrne? Here. Dr. Dunton?
Here.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yep, here.
Mrs. Warner?
I'm sorry, was that me?
Yes.
Oh, I'm here.
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Mrs. Gray?
Here.
Mrs. McCune?
Here.
Mrs. Wooldridge?
Here.
Mr. Markarian?
Here.
Mr. Syatt?
Here.
Madam President?
Great. Item number 6 is the statement of public notice. I'm not going to read it to everyone, but if you're interested, it is printed out on the agendas that are on the stage in the front. We're having a little bit of a different meeting this evening because we're going to be appointing a new Board of Education member. But before we get to that, our student representative, Mr. Miller, is here. Do you have anything to share with us tonight?
Thanks. This past Friday we had a senior-to-senior picnic, which is an event that we started doing in conjunction with the Parks and Rec Department, where seniors from the high school have dinner with senior citizens of the community here. And it was a really pleasant night, and it was, again, just a really great way for the student government to reach out to the community as a whole, which we don't get to do that often. And in addition, student government we want to plan on doing elections a little bit differently this year. It hasn't been approved yet, but we'd like to have the class student governments as well as the school officers be elected at the end of each year instead of the beginning, so that they would have time over the summer to start getting things done early. Because what we found this year was that we were disappointed at the beginning of the year with the amount that we were about to get done. So that's kind of your update. And of course we have AP testing now, so there's no big events this week to talk about.
Yes, we are aware of AP testing this week in some of our houses. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Miller?
I just have a comment. I think that's a really great idea to move the elections up.
Thanks.
Have the students been given a heads up that the elections may be coming at the end of the year instead of the fall?
Not yet, because we're still waiting for Mr. Howell's approval and other administration, I guess, since Mr. Howell's going to be here next year. So.
Also think that's a great idea. Any other questions? All right, as always, you are welcome to stay and hang out with us, but if you have better things to do, we'll see you later. Thank you, Mr. Miller. All right, so next we are up to item number 8, which is interviewing candidates for the board vacancy. I just want to share briefly with everyone who is here this evening. Once all of the candidates submitted their applications of interest to serve on the Board of Education, myself and Mrs. Wooldridge, the board vice president, contacted each and every one of the candidates over the past week. We did that, first of all, to ensure they received all of the materials necessary to meet with the board this evening and give us their statements. They've all been asked to prepare 7 minutes of comments for the board. Included in their comments, they were asked to address the following 4 questions: your background as qualification for the position, your philosophy of public education and what it can or should afford our students, your perception of the role of school board membership, and finally, the strengths that you bring to the board and areas of board committee interest. The candidates will be addressing the board, and I want to remind the candidates the microphone is there. Address the board, face us. They will have 7 minutes. Mr. Crute will be timing. There will be no interaction or question or an answer. Once all the statements are done, the board is going to hopefully have a motion to go back into executive session where we will discuss the statements that we heard. And it is our hope that when we come back out of executive session, we'll be swearing in our newest member of the Board of Education. So with that, in alphabetical order, I believe that Leo Caruso is first. Is Leo Caruso here? All right. If anyone knows who Mr. Caruso is, if he comes in, I think we were told we were going to start at 7:10, and it is 708. If anyone knows him, let us know. Next is Sophia Chada. Is the lectern mic'd? Yes. Is the lectern's mic'd?
Hello?
Oh,
Yes,
perfect.
it's working. Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Sophia Chada. I have been a resident of Bernards Township for the past 18 years. I'm a mom. My youngest child will be entering Mount Prospect in the fall. And as a mom, I care about the welfare of all children. I'm also a dental professional with an office in town. I am on staff as an associate professor at Rutgers Dental School, and I've had several leadership positions within the professional organizations that I am a part of. As an entrepreneur, I have firsthand experience in managing people and dealing with management issues. So since the board provides oversight, I feel that this would give me a unique perspective. The local school board is a critical link between public education and public schools. The school board provides guidance through policy development, a program of quality instruction, effective management of the district, and two-way communication between the community and the school board. The school board helps students by looking out for their best interests. So really what the school board is an educational watchdog for our children. The school board has to ensure that students get the best education per tax dollar spent. So with that being said, it's important for the school board to keep into consideration the community's views on what the students should learn. Because I own my own business, I have the flexibility to be available for school board meetings and training. I intend to serve out the term, and if selected, I would run for the position. I'm interested in providing the best possible education for our children, so I'm really interested in developing policies and programs that would provide the foundation for that type of exceptional education. One of the biggest issues that the board is facing is, number one, the huge drug problem, specifically the opioid issues, the opioid crisis. As a doctor, I'm directly involved with and affected by the laws that Governor Christie has instituted to try to abate this crisis. Most recently, he instituted a rule that limits the initial opioid prescriptions to 5 days for the lowest effective dose. One of the most effective ways of dealing with this issue, I think, is to start education at the middle school level. The second issue is the level of stress that our children are undergoing. It's unprecedented, and the learning environment has become extremely stressful. School environment needs to be warm and supportive so that students can thrive and learn. The third issue is the amount of homework that students are dealing with. Some people say it's too much, some people say it's too little. There clearly has to be a balance. So my professional experience as a practicing doctor would be an asset to the board, but in addition to that, I'm also on the board of a foundation that has established a school for underprivileged children that provides education as well as health care for these children. My view is holistic in nature. I believe we should consider all aspects of the child, everything from parental involvement to the health of the child, in order to really provide the best possible education. And in closing, I'll say that I would be honored to serve on this board, and I would be most interested in serving on the curriculum and personnel committees or any other committee that would be the board would require. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we have Kristen Hassler. Oh, yeah, and it's suggested, come on up, maybe try using the other microphone, even move it towards the lectern.
If
We'll see if
I
this will-
may, that microphone's very good. You just don't need to be so close to it. You can stand straight up at the center of the podium and pick you up.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know if everyone heard, but if you stand straight up at the center of the podium, the mic should capture the sound that's necessary.
And does it sound okay to everybody?
Yeah,
Okay.
it does.
It's
All
hard
right,
for me to tell.
we're
Okay.
great.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Hostler, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to tell you about myself and how I will be an asset if appointed as a member of the Berners Township Board of Education. My purpose for seeking this appointment is to use my skills and knowledge to serve the students of the Berners Township school system. I am mother to 3 children, all products of the Berners Township School District. I have a son in college, another at Ridge High School, and a daughter at William Annan Middle School. All 3 of my children also attended Oak Street School. I hold a Bachelor of Science in Business Management from St. John's University and a Master of Science degree in Elementary Education from Hofstra University. My certifications include a nursery through 6th grade New York State permanent teaching license, a kindergarten through 5th grade New Jersey standard instructional teaching license, and I've applied for a New Jersey Educational Supervisor Certificate, having completed the requirements set forth by the state of New Jersey through Rowan University. I also hold a preschool through 3rd grade New Jersey Provisional Instructional Teaching License. Currently, I teach preschool at the Black United Fund in Plainfield, New Jersey. This is a publicly funded preschool governed by the Plainfield School District. I am currently being mentored by the Plainfield School District in order to have my P3 license become a standard. While I've only been teaching in New Jersey for 5 years, I have achieved many accomplishments that demonstrate not only my dedication to my students, but my initiative to go above and beyond to serve the entire school community. As a potential member of the Board of Education, I would bring this enthusiasm, dedication, and knowledge to our school district as well. Between 2013 and 2015, I was a member of the school leadership team and co-wrote the kindergarten ELA and math curriculum maps. I also served as president of my local education association for the NJEA. This position offered many learning opportunities, such as being trained by the NJEA in contract negotiations and leadership. Both of these experiences offered me the opportunity to work collaboratively with administration to facilitate policies and programs that benefited the students. Beginning in 2015, I was the science lead teacher at my school. I planned, organized, and supervised the school science fair and was trained in NGSS, which is the Next Generation Science Standards. I also built from the ground up and served as administrator for the school website. In addition, I was a SKIP committee member serving as secretary. For those not familiar with SKIP, it stands for the School Improvement Panel, which is comprised of administrators and teachers. Outside of the classroom, I have volunteered in various capacities. These include holding the position of chairperson for the Gentle Shepherd Christian Preschool Board, along with being a member of the Somerset Hills Lutheran Church Board, both located in Basking Ridge. I was also a parent speaker through the Cancer Institute of New Jersey for families residing at Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital with their children recently diagnosed with pediatric cancer. Additionally, I have been a Cub Scout leader in Basking Ridge and a volunteer trainer for the Avon Breast Cancer Walk. I would now like to share with you what I believe to be the role of a Board of Education member. The Board of Education makes decisions and creates policies and procedures that benefit the students of the school district. These decisions are made under the laws of the state of New Jersey. The board also assesses whether or not district goals are being met. This assessment is accomplished through the collection of data, which is analyzed and discussed. The board is then responsible to create policies and procedures to support and enhance current practice and develop alternatives when needed. The policies and procedures that the board is responsible for include curriculum and instruction, buildings and grounds, business management and finance, personnel, administration, and community relations. An example of community relations is the meeting we're having here tonight. The board's responsible for keeping the community informed of what is happening within the school district. Members listen to community comments and concerns and use that information in their decision-making process. The board strives to gain public support for the schools, policies, and programs within the district. Board members are also required to serve on committees. While I would be willing to serve on any committee, my top 2 choices would be curriculum and personnel. As I mentioned earlier, I have some experience writing curriculum, and I have also taken classes on curriculum writing through Rowan University. I am also very interested in the Personnel Committee. I have had experience in this area through the Rowan Supervision Program, the Supervisor Mentoring Program I completed in East Orange, New Jersey, and through my role as Education Association President. I am available for the Board of Education and committee meetings around my full-time work schedule. I'm a 10-month employee. My hours are 8 a.m. until 3 p.m., and I am home from work between 3:45 p.m. and 4 p.m., Tuesday through Friday. Mondays I'm home by 4:30 p.m. Ideally, if appointed, I would run in the school board election in the fall with the hopes of serving a 3-year term. I also have approximately 8 mandatory days off throughout the year, along with typical school holidays and vacations. Lastly, I would like to talk about how I will handle district events and challenges in the upcoming year. While I can't tell the future, there are a few changes I see on the horizon for our school district. One change is the addition of our new Ridge High School principal, Drew Kraus. I would like to see an engaging, positive relationship developed between the board, Mr. Markarian, and Mr. Kraus. This can happen with continual communication and feedback, which should include the voices of the Ridge High School students. This is their school, and I would like to see more students take ownership in the school initiatives and foster a sense of pride in their school. Another area we've begun to address is the social and emotional needs of our students. The formation of the... Okay, I can do it. The formation of the ad hoc committee by the Board of Education is an important step in working with the community to continue to offer the rigor of a superior educational experience that includes techniques, programs, and curriculum to support students emotionally. This does not mean holding students' hands and sheltering them from failure and disappointment. This means educating students on ways to handle their stress, identify their personal triggers, and enhance their self-esteem. There is also great potential for change on the political front. We have a new administration in the White House and a gubernatorial election coming up in November. Some areas that may or may not be affected include the Common Core standards, park, universal preschool, and charter school growth. As a board member, I would stay current on these topics and work to develop ideas on preliminary policies and procedures in the event that state regulations change. Thank you for listening and learning about what I have to offer. I trust that the board will choose the candidate most fitting for this role. I will continue to offer my support to whomever is designated. Thank you.
All right, next we have Asin Janjua.
Good evening. Got some pretty good folks up here coming up here that preceded me. But I'll just start off by saying a few things about myself. Like I said, my name is Asim Janjua, parent of a second grader at Oak Street, and this fall, hopefully a second one that's a kindergartner at Oak Street School. I was born in New York, moved to New Jersey when I was in second grade, and have lived here my whole life, except for a few years that I was out for undergrad. Professionally, I'm an attorney. I focus on tax and corporate counsel, and I think that provides some skills that might fit well for this position. I advise a variety of organizations that are focused on student education, including private schools within the tri-state area. Also, for-profit institutions that are focused on tutoring and professional licensing and development. Also work with nonprofits geared towards, mostly private foundations geared towards giving scholarships and grants to educational institutions and students. And lastly, also nonprofits. Some of the nonprofits are focused on started by actually high school students focused on dealing with stress and the challenges that our students face today. So that's fascinating for me to see. I also work with nonprofits on setting up budgets, and from the tax side of it, taking advantage of the benefits of our tax code when it comes to charitable giving, and also fundraising with grants that are offered by government organizations as well as nonprofits. Lastly, I work with and interact with some state and federal agencies in dealing with our for-profit clients, our business clients, and making sure that they understand our clients understand the regulations and the change in regulatory issues that affect them, but also to make sure that the government understands and the administrative agencies understand the challenges that our clients are facing and advocating on their behalf. In terms of the role of the board, I feel it's a tough one, but I think the board's role is to really be engaged, and a board member's role is really to be an engaged contributor of the board to help set forth policies, goals, and objectives that for the district that provide the best possible environment, learning environment, and growing environment for our children, but still keeping in mind and balancing the needs of the community at large. I think it's a matter of dedicating time, energy, resources, mental and physical resources to serve students and to make sure that the school is operating at its best. In terms of my availability, as I mentioned before, I'm an attorney. I'm a founding member of the firm that I'm at now, and my partners and I actually started this firm several years ago with this intention in mind that having our own platform and leaving the corporate environment would be good for us to not only serve and be more involved with our families, but also with our communities. And I feel like this is kind of a good match of both of those things. In terms of long-term vision, I'm not the type of person who generally takes on tasks that I'm not committed to for the long haul, but at the same time, I'm cautious. So I would say that, yeah, my intention would be to be in this for the long haul, but I think I would definitely have to see how it goes over the first few months, and I think that this opportunity is excellent to try that out. Not because there's too many surprises that come from the responsibilities that are part of this board, but more to see how well that I fit into those responsibilities. Biggest challenges. This question was interesting because it says, how would you address the biggest challenges facing the Board of Education this upcoming year? And first thing I thought is, well, I'd have to listen and observe because I'm not part of the Board of Education. So I think it'd be important to listen as a newcomer. And, we've moved here recently over the past 3 years, so it would be very important to get a first-hand perspective. That being said, I think one of the major issues that I've observed in reading the news and just seeing the activities that go on at school is helping students make the right choices. They're faced with a lot of challenges and make sure that they make the right choices. And number two is budget. As far as budget, that's something that almost every organization, I guess, deals with. And as a parent, I want the school to have all the resources in the world necessary to provide the best environment for my kids. But as a homeowner and a small business owner, I want to pay as little tax as possible. So I'd like to, I had a chance to review the 5-year budget snapshot from the 2017-18 preliminary presentation, and I'd be very interested in looking more at the alternate revenue streams and sources that we have and that might be available to us. Do we qualify for specific projects, capital improvement projects that we have from private grants from private foundations? Are there opportunities to raise funds from other sources, from private people? Because we public schools do enjoy the same status as a public charity when it comes to tax deduction from contributions. As far as helping students make the right choices, I think it's a culture thing. Making sure that we set up an environment where children are, understand the importance of the academic rigor that they go through during this stage in their life, but also understand that there's a lot more to it than just homework and books and learning, and that they experience the full aspect of what it is to grow up. Lastly, the strengths to the board and the committees. I think I'm very dedicated to the tasks that I take on. It's a plus and a minus, a fresh perspective, no experience, depends on how you look at it. Almost done. I'm analytical, routinely have to review and analyze large amounts of information in a short period of time, and I'm also open to feedback and hearing what different people have to say and having a balanced approach to that. In terms of committees, I think my skills are probably best suited for finance and the advocacies committee, at least what I read from the bylaws. But I think the policy and curriculum committees would also be something that I could be interested in. Thank you very much.
All right,
Hello, I apologize, I have a little bit of a cold. Sorry. Mr. McCary, Mr. Syed, members of the board. I'm here today to apply for the vacancy on the board. Having been a resident of Basking Ridge for 20 years, with 4 children in the school system, a senior at Ridge, a sophomore at Ridge, a 7th grader at Wams, and a 4th grader at Cedar Hill, and they can serve as my broad qualification for this position. And also a guarantee that I will be around for a long while. My extensive volunteer work in Basking Ridge with Girls on the Run at Cedar Hill, as a ski advisor for the Go Ski Club, which used to be the Wham Ski Club, and as a coach for Ridge Girls Lacrosse, has put me in touch with many of the great kids in our school system. And it gives me an insight into how they also view school, because when kids are doing something fun, they like to talk about lots of different things. I'm also involved with a local grassroots organization called the Hope Autism Foundation, and I've been involved with them since the beginning, on their gala committee. Education activism is not something I expected to be doing, I didn't even want to do it, to tell you the truth, if I have to be honest. I mean, the Berners Township schools were great as far as I was concerned. They were terrific, they didn't need much changing, but with the introduction of park, I have to get that in there a little bit, with the introduction of the park and then witnessing the negative impact the state mandates were having on our school system, and more importantly, our children, I really felt like I had to get involved. I have testified on our behalf in front of the State Board of Ed in Trenton, fighting the unfair mandates and the state overreach. I have also been to the Assembly to witness the yes vote on the resolution to stop the illegal maneuvering from the state that made park a graduation requirement in the first place. And in all this, all I do is try to keep myself up to date and read and learn more and more about what affects our education today. Even though I don't have experience in education, I feel like it is something that can be learned and can be read about and can be, you can expand your horizon on. Add to that, my regular attendance at the Berners BOE meetings, I feel like I'm with you guys all the time, which has really opened my eyes to inconsistencies in our own schools that I feel must be addressed. I mean, who knows better about what is needed in our schools than those of us who live in Basking Ridge? The role of the school board is to represent the public in decisions that you or they make that will affect our children, while balancing those needs with what is mandated by the law. Students should always be the first priority considered when debating any policy, curriculum, or mandated change. Decisions must be made with fairness and common sense in mind, making sure all our local needs are met. When regulations, buzzwords, and educational fads are forced upon us, narrowing our curriculum and focusing on only one path to success, we need to fight back and broaden what has been narrowed, showing our kids that there are many, many paths to success, and they are all available to our students here in Basking Ridge. Common sense seems to have been lost in education. I feel that with the application of common sense, any challenges facing the board in the next year can be overcome. Avoiding the pitfalls of said educational fads and getting back to basics seems to be a good place to start. We in the community know what is best for our public schools, and when I say community, I mean everybody in the community. And with the guidance and expertise of this board, great things can be accomplished. The top-down approach that has plagued our education systems for the last decade has only hurt us. Berners Township has tremendous community resources that have not been used to their full advantage. It would be great to see more community-wide activities with more cooperation between the Board of Education and the Township Committee. Data and stats don't tell the whole story, and I know that we are very interested in having our schools look good with how great testing, our stats look great, our data looks fabulous. But we need to focus more on the whole child and not just the numbers. Balance needs to be brought back to education. As I've said before to the board, high school is not college, and middle school is not high school. And elementary school really should be fun. That fun and inspiration garnered during our kids' elementary education years should be something that they carry through all their years of schooling. And I really, truly feel that we've lost that a little bit. I feel that I bring a fresh perspective to the board and am not afraid to stand up for what I believe in. My willingness to learn and compromise is also a strength. I believe in great schools that educate the whole child. My availability for meetings, it should not be a problem, although I did just get a part-time job. It's only Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays from 9 to 2:30, and they are flexible. I do volunteer stuff after school, but I'm sure I could figure that out. I am interested in policy curriculum committees or liaison or advocacy. I feel like I could be placed anywhere. That would be fine. As I said in my letter, I would do my best to be a voice for the underserved, for the kids that I talked about in my letter as the underrepresented, the kids in the middle who are kind of like the forgotten kids. And I feel like they are underserved on the board. And I feel like I would be a tremendous asset since I do have very deep roots here with family and friends. And I really, really, truly believe we have great schools, and I just wanted to help make them even better. Thanks very much.
All right, next is Tim Salmon.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. I live in Basking Ridge with my wife, my twin 7-year-olds who are first graders at Oak Street, and my 3-year-old who is a gentle shepherd. About 5 years ago, my wife and I moved to Basking Ridge, and the driving factor, probably like everyone in this room maybe, was the school system. And now, having been here for 5 years, it's clear that the quality of the school system is the basis for the true community spirit that we have in Basking Ridge. So I'd like to be considered for the vacant spot on the Board of Education to do my part in building upon the great work that has already been done for the success of current and future students in our schools. By way of professional background, I'm a patent attorney. I have my degree in biomedical engineering from the University of Rochester and a Juris Doctor from St. John's University School of Law. Go St. John's. I previously worked at law firms in New York City, a pharmaceutical company in Bridgewater, and now I run my own intellectual property consulting firm. So because my office is in Parsippany and I set my own hours, I'm generally available for meetings. In town, I've coached baseball and lacrosse, taught Sunday school, and I'm the treasurer of my neighborhood homeowners association because I couldn't say no to a new neighbor with a box of cookies. I see the school board as a liaison between multiple groups, students, administrators, the community, and the state, and working with feedback from each group to build and maintain a successful academic and extracurricular environment for our children. To accomplish this, I believe the board needs to work with transparency, under sound policy, and one I think sometimes underrated factor, visibility. When I was growing up, I was probably like a lot of students in that I had no idea what the Board of Education did. But I did know the parents that served on the board because we saw them at extracurricular events, sports, graduations, and assemblies. And as a student, seeing the school board members and speaking with them at these events made me feel like there was an extra layer of support and supervision. I have a really vivid memory of my high school graduation party and a member of the Board of Education coming to the party and asking me where I was going to school and if I was going to keep playing sports. And for some reason that stuck with me as somebody that wasn't, a parent or my friend's parents or a teacher that was really invested in my success, and I hadn't really known that, and my continuing success in college. So I thought that was a memory that stuck with me about the board. In the upcoming year, probably like every year, the Board of Education will face significant challenges with our policies. As an organization that receives input from multiple stakeholder groups, I think the best way to address these challenges is to find common ground, with the goal being which answer to the challenge will contribute most to the student's success. But obviously, a challenge is going to require tough choices. And realistically, no one is going to be happy because no one's going to get everything that they want. But by following a transparent decision-making process that evaluates the options presented and the impact in selecting each option, the board can provide sound support for its decision to meet these challenges. There are 3 areas that I'm particularly interested in. One, STEM education. My background's in engineering, and I see cutting-edge technology at work pretty much every day. The pace of innovation is increasing, and we need to put our children in a position to succeed. One bad rap I think STEM education gets is that everybody thinks now every kid has to be a biologist or a computer programmer or a mathematician. But I think it's more about having some continual exposure to STEM principles as the kids go through school. But I kind of like STEM with a little bit of a twist to it, some real-world application. I mean, there are few and far between people that really love calculus. But if you can show a child how calculus influences weather prediction and might influence whether their baseball game or soccer game gets canceled or played on a Saturday, maybe they're interested in calculus now. So that little piece of it can influence a child to get interested in something like STEM. I'm a big believer in extracurricular activities. I did them when I was growing up, and I think it contributes to this idea of a Renaissance-type education. Music, school, sports, humanities, theater. I think all of that contributes to a well-rounded education and is necessary for each student and whatever their interest might be. The last area I'm interested in terms of curriculum, is something that I don't know if it gets addressed at what levels, but public speaking and communication. I think with the reliance and extreme and heavy reliance on computer technology and phones and tablets, for basically all communication purposes these days, the emphasis on public speaking and communication has kind of dropped, and I would like to see that be emphasized at even the earliest of levels. Even my first grade son and daughter, I'd like to see them doing little presentations and things to their peers and their teachers. In view of my areas of interest, I would be particularly interested in serving on the policy, curriculum, and community relations committees. However, I have no problem serving on the finance or personnel committee. I do have financial experience being the treasurer of my homeowners association, and I was the treasurer of my 80-unit co-op apartment building in Manhattan, which was no easy task. If appointed, I would certainly seek to run in the upcoming election. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
All right. Next is Jim Gopal.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education, Mr. Markarian, Mr. Syed, Mr. McLaughlin, Mr. Crute, and the Basking Ridge community. My name is James Vopel, and I'm seeking appointment to the Board of Education. As a teacher for the last 24 years, 19 of which as a fifth grade math teacher in Providence, I believe I'm uniquely qualified to serve our community as a member of the Board of Education. I'm immersed in all aspects of my school. I write math curriculum, use technology, proctor standardized tests, use numerous assessments. I was tasked with selecting our math curriculum and program. And most importantly, I meet the academic, social, and emotional needs of my students. I've also coached boys and girls varsity basketball and freshman baseball, so I know the whole high school sports dynamic very well. I've participated in a few hundred 504 and IEP meetings over the years as a teacher, and now as a parent for the last 5.5 years. So I've sat on both sides of that table. I want to bring to the board all of this experience to represent the collective needs of our students, our parents, and our staff. As I mentioned earlier, I've been a teacher for 24 years, and in that time, I've had the opportunity to nurture just about 2,240 students. And I've loved every minute of it. Some more than others, but I've loved every minute of it. And now I can add 2 more to that total as a parent. My own 2 girls, my twins, Rebecca and Emma, who are second graders at Oak Street School. I've certainly seen and learned a lot from my time in education. As a parent, I'm learning every day what it means to be a stakeholder in my children's education. So it would only feel natural then for me to take on this new role as a member of the Board of Education, so that my children and the children of this community can continue to thrive. I want to make certain that all students, whether they're in general education, special education, whether or not they take vo-tech classes or are in the gifted and talented program, that all of them are afforded that opportunity. As a school board, we take stewardship of the education of our children, and with that stewardship comes the responsibility to maintain and improve upon the quality of education we provide them. But how can we afford equal academic, athletic, and co-curricular opportunities for all students and address their social and emotional well-being? How can we do this? For me, the answer is you look at the whole child. Who are they? What do they like? What are they good at? What are their interests? Help them navigate adolescence in a way that provides concrete meaning. play to their strengths. In other words, you meet the student where they are. The bottom line is this: it's about the kids and how we apply the resources at our disposal for their academic, athletic, social, and emotional growth to best prepare them for the next phase of their life after graduation. I can't think of a better candidate to serve this community than on the Board of Ed than a teacher and a parent of young children in elementary school with a vested interest in serving their school community for the long haul. There are many challenges that face this board in the coming year: the budget, which we'll hear about later this evening, transportation, standardized testing, personnel, class size, use of technology, special education, and the list goes on. Each one of these deserve individual attention. Personally, I feel the most important challenge facing the board is twofold: student-based outcomes and student well-being. And the two go hand in hand. We have to meet students where they are and provide them the tools to be successful so they can reach their potential without feeling overwhelmed. We can do this by modifying classwork through differentiated instruction, providing extra support when needed via teacher and/or student study groups, and having students work at their own pace. In all of this, we should strive to create 21st century learners who are creative and imaginative, who are critical thinkers, collaborators, problem solvers, and who will thrive as workers and citizens in our diverse world. I bring to the board almost a quarter century in education and those 2,240 students, plus 2, my girls, and they mean something to me, and so do the 5,559 students in our community. I hope the board will use my strengths, experience, and talents to continue the excellence of the Berners Township schools moving forward. If appointed, I'd be interested in serving on the Finance and Policies committees. I understand there's a huge commitment involved, and as a teacher, daytime meetings will be difficult to attend, as you can well imagine. However, late afternoon and evening meetings are an option, and I hope the board will work with whomever is appointed to accommodate his or her work schedule to serve the community. And it is my hope to serve this community for a very long time. I would like to thank the Board of Education for the opportunity to speak here tonight, and I've been afforded the wonderful opportunity to work in 3 outstanding school districts. It is my hope that I'm afforded to work in a 4th as a member of the Berners Township Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Leo Caruso here? All right, come on up.
Members of the board, thank you very much. Good evening to everyone, including all attending tonight's meeting. I appreciate your consideration of my interest in candidacy for board membership. As you requested, I'll spend a few minutes reviewing some information that you'll find helpful in your consideration. Qualities that I feel will make me well suited for the role. I hope that you agree. With respect to my background and qualifications for the position, my family and I moved to Basking Ridge about 3 years ago. As was said earlier, a primary concern was obviously the school system being a wonderful one, and I hope to be able to contribute to that further. We have 3 children, aged 5, 3, and 2, with our eldest currently attending Liberty Corner Elementary. We've enjoyed our time here so far, and I'd like to be able to more deeply contribute to the community. And I feel that this particular opportunity would be a wonderful opportunity to do that. A little background on my life and career experiences for your consideration. I was born in Morristown, New Jersey in 1974. My parents are naturalized immigrants from Italy that moved here separately. They met at Seton Hall University while obtaining their degrees in education, and they ultimately led long careers in social work for the state of New Jersey. I was raised in Morris County, Whippany to be exact. I attended Rutgers University where I obtained an undergraduate degree in biology. And after Rutgers, I attended Fordham University School of Law in New York City and practiced corporate and securities laws in New York City for several years before moving overseas to work for Linklaters, which is a top 5 global corporate law firm based out of London. For the next 7 years, I lived and worked in London and Rome, Italy. It was a great time for me, both career-wise and in terms of my cultural education. I obtained a great deal of diversity in terms of perspective during my time there. While there in Italy, I met my lovely wife, Corey, and since I'm the only guy who moves to Italy to marry a girl from North Carolina, it was only natural that we would move back to New Jersey a few years later, and in 2008 we did that to start a family. Once back, I joined the law firm Sidley Austin, which is a top 10 U.S. Domestic law firm focused on corporate securities work, as well as a wide variety of other work. After a few years, I accepted a position with Barclays, a global investment bank, where I served there as an assistant to their legal and compliance efforts internally. I was promoted 6 times in terms of coverage area while there over the course of 3 years, ultimately obtained the position of director. I left there only because I was offered a role as general counsel of a New York technology firm by the name of Case, which is also a registered broker-dealer and fund manager in New York City. I served with Case initially as their general counsel. Over the course of the next 3 years, I also took over the roles of Chief Operating Officer, Head of Human Resources, and Chief Compliance Officer. Across those roles, I garnered a tremendous amount of different management experience, as well as real understanding of what it means to be practically successful beyond legal considerations. In 2016, I saw the opportunity to be able to branch out on my own while being able to focus my energy more clearly on those things that I feel are most important to me in my life, including my children, my family, and my community. In January of this year, I launched a business management consulting firm, as well as a corporate securities law firm based out of New York and Basking Ridge, New Jersey. And that has gone very well so far, and I'm very excited about that opportunity. I hope to be able to do more with that opportunity and flexibility, and some of that more is an opportunity to be able to assist you in your efforts as a board. With that background, I'll try to address the specific questions that the board has relayed with respect to the different activities that the board feels are critical. The first aspect is my perception of the role of the school board and how it helps students. As the board has noted, 4 of the primary functions of the board include providing guidance through policy development, providing program quality of instruction through curricular endeavors, providing for effective management, and facilitating communication, again, among the constituents of the educational community. With respect to the first item, the board provides guidance through policy development in a slew of areas. Among those areas, my strengths are particularly well suited to personnel, general administration, having acted as head of HR and COO of my prior firm, and my technical experience, I believe, is very well suited to fiscal and business management, as well as community relations, having had many years of legal practice experience alongside CFOs, auditors, and marketing and public relations personnel of multinational firms around the world. With respect to providing a program of quality instruction, the board is engaged in adopting state-mandated curricular standards, assessing district and personnel needs, supporting training of staff, and reporting on the results of those assessments. In these areas, I believe much of what the board does may be driven by curricular mandate, but I believe I can provide lift through analysis, advocacy, and support in execution of the mandate. I've never been a person to be concerned about rolling up my sleeves and getting in on challenges, and that's what I would do in this context as well. In terms of providing for effective management, the board is engaged in a slew of activities. My strengths in those areas, I believe, are particularly well suited to analysis and evaluation, as well as the establishment and tracking of policies, deployment of post-implementation metrics, and assessment of efficacy. In both of my roles as CCO of Case and COO of Case over the entirety of my time at Barclays, I was deeply involved in internal policy development, implementation, management, and enforcement. I think I can bring those roles to the board as well. In my role as COO, I also became very familiar with management and technological challenges and opportunities facing all organizations as they strive to modernize in today's global society. With regard to facilitating two-way communication among the community, my strengths include very deep experience in informational context and disclosure preparation, public relations and marketing initiatives, including modern electronic communication and marketing techniques, promotion of collaborative and constructive dialogue, and, if required, diplomatic mediation and resolution of issues and challenging conversations. Generally, being interactive and engaged with all contributing parties and having an open ear and emotional quotient is really critical to the success of those endeavors. Other key areas of consideration are obviously those sensitive matters that the board addresses behind closed doors, including litigation, contracts, sensitive student and personnel matters. In those areas, I hope, from my background, you can tell I have extensive experience with respect to litigation assessment, engagement and management of external counsel, as well as considerations in mediations, alternative dispute resolutions, settlement discussions, testimony and litigation. In terms of contract negotiations and drafting, well, absolutely, thank you. In terms of contract negotiations, well, I've been doing that almost every day for 16 years, so I'm well suited for that. And with respect to sensitive student and personnel matters, I have extensive HR experience, as I had mentioned. With regard to availability and long-term vision for service on the board, as I mentioned, I recently established a firm. I have full availability day and in the evenings. I'm immediately accessible, and I work generally 3 to 4 days of the week out of Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Regarding how I would address the biggest challenges, I'll address the biggest challenges the way I've always addressed those challenges, through a combination of comprehensive and objective information gathering, detail-oriented analysis, consideration of issues from all perspectives with objectivity, and solutions that are reasonable, fit to purpose, and right-sized to available resources. My entire career is based on doing things in that manner, and I intend to continue with the board if given the opportunity. I'll end it there. I hope this overview helps the board in its review. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, and thank you again for your consideration of my interest in the board.
Thank you very much. I just want to note how fortunate all of the board members feel that we have so many highly qualified candidates who are actually willing to come and do this with us. So thank you, all of you, for your interest and your thoughtful comments. At this point, do I have a motion to go into executive session? Mrs. Gray, second, Dr. Dunton. So the board's going to go into executive session for about a half hour, and when we come back out, it is our intent to swear in a new member of the Board of Education once we have nominations and a vote. Yeah. Oh, all in favor of going into executive session? Yeah. Anyone opposed to going into executive session? All right, we'll be back. Okay, we already had a motion to come out of executive session. And before we get to our next motion, I just want to say on behalf of the entire board, this was challenging because we had some really, really good qualified candidates. For those of you who are not going to be joining the board this evening, we encourage highly your continued involvement, your continued participation both in school level activities and participation in observation of Board of Education meetings, because going forward there will be every year opportunities to join our board. And like I said, this was a very challenging decision because there were excellent candidates. With that, do I have any motions for nomination for the Board of Education? Mr. Fry?
I'd like to nominate Jennifer Korn.
Is there a second? Mrs. Gray, may we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mr. Fry,
Yes.
Dr. Dunton,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Byrne,
Yes.
Mrs. Swerner,
Yes.
Madam President.
And with that, we would like to call up our newest board member, Jennifer Korn, to take her oath. Did she stand up for you? Yeah. You can stand in the center of the stage, and then we have a seat saved for you.
That's what I just said to you.
Congratulations, Jen. Don't get too comfortable because the board is now going to pick up their budget presentation and come down to the audience for the public hearing on the 2017-2018 budget.
Good evening and welcome to the annual public hearing for the Bernards Township Board of Education budget for the 17-18 school year. I'm Rod McLaughlin, I'm the school business administrator, and I'll be presenting this evening with Mr. Markarian, our superintendent of schools. So I'd like to begin with just a brief snapshot of what our budget proposed expenditures are for the upcoming 17-18 year compared to the current year's budget. We'll start by noting that the header is wrong, okay? But on the columns they are correct, 16, 17, and 17, 18. And the proposed increase for general operating expenses is $2,076,929. $579,086 is an increase for capital expenses. As we go through this presentation, we'll drill down into those numbers. The total general budget is going up $2.656 million. We have no anticipated changes in our level of federal funding, and we anticipate that our debt expenses, meaning the cost of payment for principal and interest on our outstanding serial bonds, will decline by $200,000. So our total budget is anticipated to be $101,171,316, and our proposed change, net change, is just under $2.5 million. So the total $2.6 million increase breaks down basically into two sets of drivers. $1.8 million in salary increases driven primarily by negotiated contractual increases with the board's collective bargaining units, the largest of which, of course, is the teachers' union and the administrators' union. In addition to that, we have some anticipated increases in other salary areas such as extended school year, leave replacements, home instruction, and substitute costs. But this is where the lion's share of that money is going, right here, the contractual increases. Non-salary costs of just under $800,000 are driven by some tech hardware procurement throughout the district. These are, it's not really a big purchase for us this year. Last year we did have a $1.1 million purchase, and so we would anticipate that we may have something similar to that again in 18-19. This year, while we are spending a significant amount of money for technology, it's more in terms of sustaining small initiatives that we have throughout the district. So replacing scheduled computers in tech classrooms and that sort of thing throughout the district. It's not as big an initiative as what we had this last year, current year actually. Transportation represents a part of the increase. We'll talk about that a little bit more in another moment, but essentially the increase there is a cost of living increase of about 3%, and then an adjustment for the 15-16 year, because we entered into a new agreement in the 15-16, 16-17 year with the Somerset County Ed Service Commission for transportation, which calls for a look back, if you will, at the end of that year, and an adjustment from what we paid them in our budget to what their actual audited costs were. I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. For those of you who've been around for the last year, you probably heard us speak about that as that contract evolved. Of course, in terms of capital, I did talk about a $500,000 increase. The major driver there is the Ridge High School track resurfacing project. That actually is included in the current resources of this budget, comes out of the current resources. And then we have one state facility tuition placement. So we always like to take a look, the board's always interested in terms of knowing how much fund balance we budget every year. Generally, we've been in the neighborhood for the last 5 years of about aside an additional $500,000, and we have to make that decision, and we did make it last year in June, was in anticipation of a particular adjustment that we would have to make to the Ed Service Commission for the cost of their services for busing for the 15-16 years. I just mentioned a few moments ago, the new contract calls for us to true up from what we pay them to what an audited actual number is, and we do that in the subsequent year. Since this was the first cycle of that, the first year, we had no basis for determining exactly what it was. We had some preliminary estimates. We had a lot of information from the Ed Service Commission, and you may recall, those of you who were here for the presentation by the Ed Service Commission superintendent, that he thought that the shortfall that they were going to experience, that we would have to reimburse them for when he came to the board and spoke to us about it, was between $500,000 and $700,000. So we set aside additional funds in anticipation of that, so that we would not be in a situation where we would theoretically have to make a decision about sustaining ongoing or existing programs that were in the district in terms of education or support or extracurricular. Capital projects, we always like to tell the public and the board what we're doing with respect to capital projects. We have ongoing, and I'll start at the bottom with the projects as opposed to the revenue side. We've got the Oak Street new ventilator HVAC upgrade and replacement, so that will install new univentilators in all the instructional spaces that don't currently have upgraded or updated univentilators and or air conditioning in them. So that's 25 units, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in another minute. The Ridge High School track resurfacing project is $316,978. I'd like to talk a little bit about the funding sources for these two projects. The School Development Authority grants that you see up at the top and the capital reserve respectively make up, these two respectively make up the funding for this HVAC project. So this has been a long time in the works in terms of the funding. We first started these capital reserve increases in 2012, and I think it was 2014 when we first had the opportunity to get School Development Authority grants. We put forward 10 grant projects, and we've been proceeding through those projects since that time. With the completion of Oak Street, the only HVAC project that will remain to be done will be the project over at the William Manning Middle School. So I'm pleased to say that we've completed Liberty Corner, we've completed Cedar Hill, we've completed the two additional wings up at the high school, and this summer we will complete Oak Street. These funds have no direct impact on our operating budget because we provided through savings, through capital reserve in prior years, and through grants that we've leveraged with the state. Which leaves us with the current operating budget only picking up $316,000 of the $1.9 million. And we'll talk about how we made an accommodation in the revenue streams of the district this year so that this, in fact, 316 does not impact any of our current operating programs either. So, just a brief visual in terms of the Oak Street project. You can see anything that's up here. This is the second floor. This is the first floor. This is the 1995 wing, already had existing AC and operable and good ventilator systems or heating and air conditioning systems in there. So anything you see in pink or in blue is something that's being done. Any of the other areas over here, for example, if I remember, it's a little hard to see, it's small. We have the gymnasiums and the cafeteria, and of course they already have it. And this is just the drawing from our track resurfacing project. What you see here are, these are the, if I remember correctly, the long jump pits. Over here, we've got pole vault, and of course the track itself. So any of these areas that you see arrows going down to, including the track, of course, itself, are going to be resurfaced. Major factors in the budget. We'll talk about state aid again in another moment, but again, no surprise, it was flat for the current year. Current programs and services are sustained. The local tax levy is proposed at 2%, so it's within cap. The debt levy will decrease because we've been pursuing for the last 5 years, actually the last 6 years, refunding all of our outstanding debt as it became eligible for refunding. As I just mentioned, our budget continues to address our long-term capital needs with both the Oak Street Ventilator Project and the Ridge High School track resurfacing project. Enrollment in a variety of programs and staff turnover is going to determine considerations for additional staff, and there's more conversation about that towards the end of this presentation. Just a brief comparative analysis of the district's transportation costs, since they do represent a significant portion of our operating budget. So really we've got it broken down into a number of categories here. The first and the largest number of students that we transport are about 2,500 or so students that are in district that are provided transportation to and from school. The cost for that, as you can see, relatively flat year over year. What we did do in 16-17 compared with 15-16 to try to contain this cost and to address the fact that the Ed Service Commission was anticipating a $500,000 to $700,000 shortfall, which we potentially would have had to pay out to them if we wanted to maintain the level of service we had, was to take the level of ridership and increase it from, in terms of occupancy on a bus, from about 64% here to 75%. It actually happened this year, but you don't see it until here. The way we did that was to consolidate routes because we had a number of routes that had less than 50% ridership on them. So when the cost of a route for a 54-passenger bus is around $45,000, give or take, that becomes a very expensive proposition when we had 11 routes that were in that area. So that's how we were able to essentially contain costs. Special education students that are transported in the district are students that this group here of about 144 students are students transported to and from our schools, but due to their classification, they require special accommodations on buses that generally have a much smaller ridership, and we did have an increase in that number of students this year, so you do see an increase from the current budget to the proposed budget. And again, these are budget to budget, okay, to give a relative reference. These are not pictures of where we happen to be, because with special education in particular, not just with transportation, but also with the educational needs of the students, if these needs arise during the course of a current year, we have to accommodate them, and we do. However, what I'm trying to do here with this presentation is to give the public an apple-to-an-apple comparison, because every one of these is what the budget looked like at the time we approved it for these respective years, which would have always been in April or May, depending on how far back you go, but in this case, it's always been May. Moving on, the next group of students that we transport that are of a significant cost to us are those students that are transported out of district to out-of-district placements. So these, again, would be special needs accommodate whatever needs arise during the course of the year. That's transportation. This is a snapshot of the revenue, and while it goes back to 13-14, what I'd really like to focus on is the difference between the current year 16-17 and 17-18. The first difference, of course, is the budgeted fund balance, which I mentioned to you is up $500,000+. And again, the driver here was the anticipation that we might have a significant tab come due from the Educational Services Commission for the 15-16 year. The audit that was agreed to, which is really, as the CPAs would like to refer to it as an agreed upon procedures engagement, because it was not an audit of financial statements, was completed in December, late December of this past calendar year 2016. So as you can see, that's a full 6 months after we would have set aside that balance. That balance has to be set aside by law as of June 30th at the close of your year. So we had limited information to rely upon. What I will tell you is that after that engagement was concluded, and after we sat for another 2 months, 3 months actually, with both that audit engagement firm and with the Ed Services Commission, that the tab that's come due is only $198,000. So we're very pleased that it's less than what we anticipated. The Ridge Sports Foundation began a capital contribution to the board in 15-16 towards payment of the Wellness Center. That work has been completed now for it'll be 2 years this summer, but they continue to make their contribution up to the 50% limit, and based on how we're amortizing the debt, because we did take a 5-year note on that, this is what their portion of that will be for 17-18. The maintenance reserve is one of the number of reserves that we've set up in the last 5 years in order to give the district some flexibility with respect to how it manages its budget and its ability to address capital items that don't meet the standard of, quote, a capital project. What do I mean by that? Well, the state of New Jersey makes a distinction between replacing an entire system in a building, or a component of a building, as opposed to subsets thereof. So, for example, if we were to go in and replace all of the electrical wiring in this building, that would be a capital project. If we just came into this particular space and happened to replace the wiring that only affected the sound system, that would be required maintenance. So that varies year over year, predicated on what the operational needs of the district are. Every year, at a minimum, we have to appropriate whatever the board has approved as a required maintenance plan, which is submitted in, I believe, October every year to the state. That plan is something that is worked upon by our Director of Facilities, Mr. Harding, every year. I review it after he's completed it for propriety and make sure that it's compliant with state regulation, and then the board adopts that every year. Capital reserve, we're not appropriating anything in the budget. That'll show up after the fact. Interfund transfers, we have none. Tuition and miscellaneous revenue. So the largest driver there really is the tuition that we collect from other school districts for students that they send to us to participate in some of our programs for students with special needs. Where and whenever we happen to have space in those programs that our resident students do not need, and outside districts are aware of those, we offer them the opportunity to place a student there on a tuition basis. That generates about $1.2 million of what you see up there this year. The next largest driver really there is the revenue that we collect collect for subscription busing, because the state requires that we provide busing to families at the elementary and middle and high school levels if they are within, beyond, I should say, certain distances from school. But there are about 300 or so students who are within those limits, both at the elementary, middle, and high school level, and are therefore offered the option of purchasing a seat on the bus. Because it would be nice if we could afford to give it away for free, but as I said, the cost of a 54-passenger bus is about $45,000. So if you do the math and you're looking at 330 students, you're looking at about 7 buses. The next biggest piece in there is revenue that we collect for actually rental of this facility and a lot of our other facilities throughout the district. And then we have a one-time, one-shot, and you see it out here, $393,000 bump that's going on here, as you see 1721. And what that is contribution from the Ridge High School and the William N. Middle School student activity accounts for funds that they've had in those accounts for more than 5 years that have been unexpended. They've had, in fact, going back 6 or 7 years at least, significant balances that have been collected prior to the tightening of how those funds were recorded as being expended, meaning that they had been collected for legitimate purposes, never expended because they were probably guesstimates of how much needed to be collected. Now when that happens, what we do is we ask them to give a refund back to the families, but there's no way that you can trace where those funds came from. State regulation and our auditor advise us that it's appropriate to have them make a contribution to the district for something that all students will use. So in the case of the contribution from the high school student activities accounts, that's going to go to the track project. And in case of the contributions to the middle school, it's going to go to procure some additional technology for their library media centers. The next item down is the general levy. That's the general tax levy. As I indicated earlier, we are at cap at 2%. The semi-reimbursement, and excuse me, I've skipped over, I should not have. State aid. State aid is flat. As you can see, there's no change. 3.2 million, 3.2 million. An extraordinary aid is always a wild card for the state. We anticipate $1.7 million, and we have for the last several years, and we've been lucky enough to receive that and then some. However, the state does not tell us what we're actually going to get until the close of the school year. So it will be June 30th of 2018 for the 17-18 year before they tell us how much we're going to get, which is why we budget conservatively for it. Semi-reimbursement is the special education Medicaid initiative. The state's mandated that we participate in it. It's an extremely administratively intensive program, especially for the members of the special education teams in our district in terms of having to respond to random time studies that are sent via email to them by the state's third-party contractor to track potential collection of costs related to the specific services that they might provide for certain related services such as physical therapy or occupational therapy that would qualify under this program. This is really a program that the state's pushing because for every dollar the district collects or is eligible for, I should say, under this, the state collects about 65 cents on that dollar and the district gets about 35 cents of the dollar. So it's a revenue generator for the state. This is their estimate of how much we potentially would collect, and that's why it's there. Federal grants, as I indicated, are relatively flat. The biggest driver there, the biggest component there really are the Individuals with Disabilities Act funding, which represents of that. We have another 350 or so thousand that is Title I funds, which are No Child Left Behind, now referred to as ESSA, and also Title II and Title III funds make up the balance of that, but they're relatively small amounts. The debt levy, as I indicated, is down a combined 200, well actually the levy itself is down $182,000. The payment on the debt is down $200,000. But because we refinanced, and we've done this, I think now for about 90% of our outstanding debt in the last 6 years, we continue to drop the amount of levy that's necessary to collect from the taxpayer. It drops by $182,000, but the state aid that matches us, of course, goes down because we're paying less debt. We're paying less debt. So total revenues, $101,171,316. No, it's not advancing. Yeah, we did lose it. It's not. Yeah, it's there. But it's yeah, I'm trying that. The arrow. So we just continued on with this. It's a nice big number. The state, if we had this, the possibilities would be endless, but the state continues to give us this. This is an estimate, but you can see where what we were supposed to get in the School Funding Reform Act back in 9/10. You can see what happened here. Even worse in 10/11. We've never fully recovered from that in terms of state aid. Okay, I've really touched on a lot of what makes up this slide in a number of places already, but to summarize, the general levy is going up $1,006,000. That's a 2% increase over the current levy, going from $82,109,000 to $83,751. However, the debt levy is actually dropping by $182,000 from $5,284,000 to $5,102,000, which means that the net impact of the general levy and the decrease in the debt levy is 1.671%. That's the net effect of the taxpayer influence. So again, we've reduced the debt levy by 11.5% and increased our bond rating with AAA rating in the last 6 years. The net tax levy over the last 6 years, if you were to take the last 6 years and average this out, is 1.73%. The district is one of only 4 K-12s in the state with a AAA bond rating. And for those who care to do the math, and this is the way that the tax assessor computes it. For every $100 of assessed value of your property, the increase amounts to a little over 2 cents. And I wasn't waiting, but thank you. General operating expense. So here's a 5-year budget expenditure snapshot. I'm going to drill down a little bit more. We talked about this in one of the first slides. $2 million, slightly over $2 million goes to general operating expenses, which are day-to-day, what we do, the nuts and bolts of running the district. Everything from, instruction in the classroom and transportation and electricity, all the way back to, nurses' supplies and supplies for the band and, stipends for coaches and things of that sort. It's all in there. Capital expenses are the ones that I've laid out for you already. Okay? So the subtotal increase again, $2.656 million. Debt service goes down $200,000. Total budget increase $2.456 million. So how much of that 276 is instruction? exactly an increase of 1368 for instruction and 708 for support costs. We're going to take a look at how that breaks down in a minute. So, the breakdown for the instruction, $1,368,924, $1,025,000 is general education. That's up 3.54%. Special education is next, $164,323. That's 1.15%. Basic skills and English as a second language. That's up $113,182. That's 11.83%. Extracurricular is up just $12,000. That's 3.41%. And of course, athletics is up $53,000. That's 4.21%. I know there may be some folks out there that are wondering why, because special education is a very large component of our overall district budget at $14 million. Why the increase is only 1.15%. I'm going to talk about that in another moment. Just a breakdown for those who always like to see what the breakdown is, if you will, for general education in terms of by building, for salaries in the building, and for supplies, so teachers and supplies. What's in the classroom, basically. Okay, so while there are multiple years of data for those who care to go back and look at it, really what we're looking at are these last two columns, the current 16-17 year, the 17-18 year. What's the difference in terms of dollars? What's the difference in terms of percentage? We start off with a look at special ed enrollment. These numbers are numbers that are tied to what we put into the budget. They may not be as current as what's happening right now, this minute, because these, as with our general education population, numbers change on a regular basis. Every day when I sit at my computer in the office, I see notifications from Mrs. Barushka in our office that a student has left the district, or I see notifications from Michelle Viniello in the school registrar's office that a student is registered in our district. So they're constantly in flux. This 742 was an exact count from our rolls of students that had an IEP as of February. So increase there is about 21 over where we were about a year ago. The breakdown now of the programs of where those $14.4 million in funds are going. $1,034,000 is the ModCog program, and as you can see, there's actually a slight, it's relatively flat, it's a slight decrease. And what I'm going to tell you about this program and the learning language program, and overall, while the increase is generally just at 1.15%, is that a large driver of this cost is the cost of instructional aids. Students need significantly, most of these, not these 742, but a significant subset of these students need a significant amount of in-class support from instructional aids. And the board did negotiate with the teachers union, which represents the instructional aides, a freeze, if you will, on their salaries for a 3-year period. So that has a lot to do with keeping this cost relatively low. Okay. The auditory impairments program had a minor increase of about $5,000. It looks like a large percentage, but then the cost of the program is really only one teacher and some support costs. And so what you see here really is the increase, a large portion of that is really driven just by the contractual salary increase, depending upon where the employee was in the guide. Behavioral disabilities, what you're seeing there are turnover savings that are going on. So when we have staff come, or go, I should say, go out on leave, we often see that Mr. Science does yeoman's work on a regular basis with fill that with an employee of equal competence, but at lesser compensation, because obviously individuals that are here, that are tenured, have an opportunity to advance up the guide. When he's negotiating with someone for a short-term period of time, he tries to do that to affect some savings as long as it does not impact the quality and level of the service that's provided. In terms of what we see here in the autism program, and I have to refer back to my notes because I can't get them up here on the screen, we have a teacher and an additional, if I try to read my own handwriting on this, 1.5 aides that were added from here to here basically, and so you see that reflected in this number along with contractual increases. The preschool program had an increase in FTEs of about a half of a body, and then the rest of it is contractual increases. And then in terms of tuition, what we're looking at here is, at that point in time, a projected decrease. So based on not so much the number of students that were placed out, but based on where their placements were, and that could change over the course of the year. We traditionally have somewhere in the neighborhood of 37 to 40 students that are placed out of district at various levels of placement out of district in terms of the nature of the complexity of the program that they're in, whether that's a private school, a public school, or residential placement. Depends upon what their IEP is. And it can, in fact, change during the year because sometimes placements and the child's needs evolve over the course of the year, and that number can change. So, they might be in a school that's not a residential placement, but might end up in a residential placement. We don't have a lot of those, but the cost difference, as you can imagine, is significant. And overall, what we're looking at is an increase, a net increase of $164,000. That is really driven by this theoretical, and I call it that, reduction in tuition because that can change in the blink of 2 or 3 students. That could go away. The board has, with its reserve structure and the way we handle extraordinary aid, because as I mentioned earlier, we don't get the extraordinary aid notification from the state until the end of the year. And what the state does do, at least to its credit, is because they don't give us the money when the year is over. They give us in August for the year that's just closed. They allow us to keep that, if you will, in reserve for 1 year. And we are entitled to use that, and what we do use it for is a hedge against any kind of significant cost that could be incurred as a result of a new student or a change in their placement, because the cost changes here for 1 or 2 students can be significant. We need to accommodate their needs, and we don't want to have to do it in a manner that impacts the remainder of our operating budget. So that's the means by which we affect that hedge, if you will. Here's a 5-year breakdown of the support services component of the budget. So you can see that health services is relatively flat. What you're seeing there is contractual increases that are driven by salaries. Related services, and I apologize for fumbling a little bit, but my eyes aren't what they used to be, and with this light it's even worse. There's an increase of 0.7 FTE in staff, and the rest of it is contractual increases. So that's the driver for the $79,670. The extraordinary services, what we're seeing here is just an increase in the district in the number of one-to-one nursing services. So that number is going up significantly over the last couple of years in terms of the number of students that require one-to-one nursing services as part of their IEP. Typically, per student, that amounts to $55,000 a year if we have to procure that service. The guidance services, we're looking at an increase, what we're looking at, this increase that we're looking at here is due to a loss of leave savings and contractual increases. So where I was showing in the previous slide where we had some savings as a result of leave, tenured or permanent staff come back, we see those increases come back into the budget. And then, of course, we have negotiated contractual increases in there as well. So, as you can see, the budget is it's got an ebb and a flow that every year we have to try to get a handle on when we structure it or strike the budget, so that we are not simply just budgeting on the one hand where whatever the existing incumbent's position was, because on the one hand where we know we're going to have leaves and we're going to have savings, that helps to offset where we have people coming back. It's constantly in flux, and we've gotten used to trying to manage that. The child study team, these are just, supply changes basically that can vary from year to year in terms of what they've asked for. In terms of the media center, again, these are really driven by, the changes you're seeing here are really the net changes in supply change when we just see a flat change like this. Supervisory and improvement of instruction, what we have here at $91,000 is really some contractual increases that came along, as well as some leave changes that were in play here, if I remember correctly, where we have people on leave, as well as someone covering for those positions. In terms of central services, it's relatively flat. It's less than 1% on about $6 million portion of our budget. Operations and plant maintenance is, again, about the same. It's actually a slight decrease. And then transportation, as I mentioned before, $198,000 of that is attributable to our contractual commitment with the Ed Service Commission to pay them for what they incurred in the prior year, 15-16. So actually 2 years ago, prior year right now. And employee benefits, I'm pleased to say, are relatively flat. This is no small undertaking here. It anticipates an increase from our major medical carrier, which is Horizon Blue Cross. However, again, and to the board's negotiating team's credit, when they negotiated the current contract, there was a win-win in terms of the union membership getting a nominal increase that was to their liking, but in turn they agreed to stay with just one of the two levels of coverage that we have, which is the POS versus the PPO, unless they were buying up to it. So, that essentially helps us to keep that flat. So in other places where I'm talking about contractual increases, what you see here is relatively flat. That helps us to pay for those contractual increases. Sorry. I think I've gone by. That's it. Is that it? And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Markarian to talk a little bit more about enrollment and about staffing.
Yeah, I think I'll. Yes. Good evening, everybody. My name is Nick Markarian. I'm the superintendent, and apologize for the late hour here, but obviously we had a lot going on this evening, as we often do in the last couple months of the school year before we head out through graduation. So thank you for bearing with us. I'll try to keep this relatively brief. Mr. McLaughlin basically explained what's going on with a $100 million budget. I'm going to talk briefly about where we have a little bit of wiggle room from one year to the next in terms of our staffing. That probably measures around $500,000. This is an enrollment snapshot, very simply highlighting the simple fact that we are starting to see a decline in enrollment in the district. Going between our current year and next year, we're looking at roughly 141 students that we anticipate going down by, largely driven by enrollment in our incoming kindergarten classes, as it has been in the last couple of years. So we talked about this over a month ago when we were working on our preliminary budgets. And one of the things that we always take a look at when we're in a climate that doesn't provide a lot of wiggle room with our additional staff ideas is the notion that there's turnover. Mr. McLaughlin alluded to this a little bit when he talked about people leaving and people coming. And when you have someone who is seasoned and approaching retirement and or retiring, sometimes you're able to sort of get 2 for 1, if you will. The person retires, their salary is budgeted, and maybe it's enough that you can hire a person and a half. A few people retire, together you roll it up, and this year maybe we'll see $500,000 of salary funds that we can put to work. So that's really what we take a look at. Obviously, these decisions are driven not only by student enrollment changes as they choose different courses potentially in the district where they have the option to select courses and elective courses, but also because of student IEPs and the needs that are driven by law. One of the things that we've noticed over the past few years is that even though we've seen the enrollments dipping a little bit at the elementary levels, sometimes some areas are growing. Some of our special programs are increasing, even though overall enrollment goes down. So you're shifting resources around to try to match things up to where you have the needs. Other data-driven needs is noted up here as well, and that refers to things like the presentation that Ms. Shades did earlier this year when we were looking at some of our programs with regard to guidance and counseling services. Ms. Shades, thanks for hanging in there, Jill. Well, we promised to celebrate in a little bit. Okay. Okay, moving right along. So with all those things in mind, I wanted to make some recommendations for the board and what we would like to do with respect to a handful of positions. First, we have a need for our autism program that is growing for a teacher and a speech teacher. So we are looking to post these positions essentially this week. The second thing is for the high school, a computer science teacher. This again is for enrollment growth in our high school computer science program. The next is for William Middle School. They have been asking for a SAC for a while now, and we really want to fund that this year. Obviously, the goal there is to strengthen our SEL programs, to work with our students at the middle school, and really try to focus in on some of the program issues that Ms. Shadis identified in her program review for guidance counseling services, as well as in the statistical analysis that she presented earlier in the year. We want to do the same thing at Ridge, but we haven't exactly decided which direction we want to go. The board, if you've been around the last month or so, you're probably aware that the board petitioned an ad hoc SEL committee. And one of the things we want this SEL committee to take a look at is the concept of possibly bringing in a third-party provider for clinical psychological services at Ridge High School. So we're going to take a little bit more time to take a look at this, but certainly by the end of the school year, we hope to make a recommendation as to exactly where we want to go in terms of who to bring in. The last consideration that we're taking a look at is for a technology teacher over at William Adam Middle School. William Adam currently has 3/5 of a teacher essentially being done by the work of the staff that are already at middle school. Those staff are essentially taking on an extra class. We have 3 such staff members already going at William Adam Middle School. So if we can afford it, one of the considerations would be to hire someone full-time, 5/5, 5 classes, have them teach those 3 classes so that those other 3 teachers are not teaching an extra section, and then put them to work doing a couple more sections of technology education at William Adam. That would be nice to have. It's not necessarily something we're going to be able to afford, but we're going to watch it over the next month or so to see what happens. That's it. That's my portion. So what we would do at this point, board members, I invite you to head back up onto the stage, and we have to take some more action with regard to our presentation for this evening and some voting items that we have to do for the budget.
Okay. Just to clarify where we're going next, under item number 11, public hearing on the budget, the second thing we're going to do is board forum on the budget, where board members are going to have some questions and commentary on the budget, followed by number 3, which is public comment on the budget. Then there is an addendum, which I think was on the front of the stage too, items 4 and 5, where the board will actually vote on the budget, and then we will get around to the rest of our agenda. So with that, we are at board forum on the budget. Do any board members have any questions or comments on the budget that was just very thoroughly presented? Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Anyone? Mrs. Korn?
Hello. All right, under the 5-year breakdown of instruction, I had a question about the basic skills ESL. And is that separate from special education? And it went up.
Yeah, it's
it went
not
up
special ed
11%.
at all.
That's why it's not a big number, but
No, it's not special education. So the basic skills are like remedial skills that could be any student. And then the English as a second language is for those students that meet certain state administratively code prescribed standards for the need for additional services because they're not native English speaking students.
so the number would go up just because we have more students that
Right.
need that. Just digging.
Any other questions, comments? I've got one. On the 7-year tax history page, this is more of a comment. Mr. Byrne made a joke, but I really want to point out that the fact that we are one of 4 K-5 districts in the state with a AAA bond rating, the fact that even though we are being held to a 2% cap, our impact on taxes in the town is being held at 1.73% over the last 6 years, shows incredible fiscal responsibility of our financial leadership team, and I just feel like we can't point that out enough and thank them enough for doing that. That's huge. All right, Mrs. Gray?
I just have a quick question on the general education page. I'm curious, and there's not a lot of detail here, so there's probably an obvious answer, but now Prospect obviously has a lot of staff because they have the additional programs there, but their supplies are dramatically less than, well, a couple of the other buildings. How does that work?
The way the requests are actually made for their supplies by the building principals.
Okay.
So, and we did make reductions, and we have had to every year to those requests because they traditionally come in maybe $800,000 to $1 million more than what fits in the budget. But what we find is that every year they expend less than what we've actually budgeted. So you know, we asked the building administrators and the supervisors to give us your basically give us your wish list, because we'd like to know all of the things that they think they need. And, you know, it's not that laborious of a process for us to go back to them and say, well, you know, in order to fit in the budget, what about these items? Because we're not quite sure how, you know, because they don't give it to us in terms of a priority. Perhaps we could do that, but it would be more work for them. It's just easier for us to have them put everything into the system, and then, you know, obviously we'll review it for the obvious things that are clearly, you know, a golden egg, but not that there are that many of them in there, but it's really driven by the building administrators in response to your question. So it depends on what they feel they need in a given year.
I can get you more detail on that, though, if you want. That's not a problem.
Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, so, I missed that.
Yeah,
Mrs.
I would
Holdridge,
actually
sorry.
be interested, and I know it's not in here, but I'd be interested in more detail on the technology that you're purchasing.
Yeah, we have that.
Yeah, for next
Easy
year.
enough to get.
Did I miss anyone? All right, so now we're up to public comment on the budget, and we're going to hold it just like we hold other public comment sessions. We ask when you come up, ask your question, and state your name and address, sign in, try to limit your comments to 5 minutes in length, and anyone can during this comment period. So do we have any public comments or on the budget?
James Vogel, 20 Evergreen Place. I just have a question with respect to the budget and Title I funds and Lisa Vital-Stanzione's presentation at the last board meeting. She said that all these students are being tested, and there's an alarming amount of first graders who are being targeted is too strong a word, but they're, in essence, they qualify, I'll use that term. They qualify for extra support. My question is, with respect to the budget, when the Title I funds run out and these students are still in these response to intervention type situations, where is that money going to come from? Because if those kids are still in there, my assumption is that they're going to be classified in one way, shape, or form. So you're going to need additional staff. So where is that money going to come from once the Title I funds run out? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Stacy Letty. I just had a really quick question. First of all, I just want to thank Mr. Markarian, because there's a lot of us back there that were very excited to hear that we're budgeting for another SAC at the middle school. So yay for that. I just had a question about the money from the Student Activities Fund that was found. The Finance Committee stated that there was, I can't remember the exact amount, but we talked about it a couple weeks ago. The Finance Committee stated that the money was going to be set aside and discussed later, maybe for some programs for the students. So it was kind of surprising to find out that that money had somehow gotten rolled into the track project, and also the some technology purchase. So I'd like to understand, why that money is not being set aside as previously discussed for projects for the kids or programs for the kids. That's it.
Thank you. Any other public comments on the budget? All right, so we are going to close public comments on the budget. I believe 2 questions were raised. Is anyone available to address them? Mr. Markarian?
So the first question with regard to the Title I funds, a couple of things with regard to that, and Mr. McLaughlin, I'm sure will jump in and correct me if I get this wrong, but we actually are a year behind in our spending of the Title I funds because we got them unexpectedly. So it's a large pool of money that already is going to last at least an extra year beyond the program that we started, because we started with essentially a year banked going forward. The other issue is that the way that those funds have been spent are not for staffing. Largely, those funds have been spent for supplies and for training of professional staff, and I don't anticipate that the identification process was about necessarily classifying students for special services necessitating the need to hire staff. We never planned to use the Title I funds specifically for staffing. So, albeit there may be supplies and purchases that could extend beyond the Title I funds if those Title I funds run out, but they were never planned to be used directly for staffing, so I'm not anticipating it as a staffing concern directly. With respect to the student activity funds, I'm actually not sure where the confusion is on that. I don't think that those activity funds were talked about for anything except the use of the track project. So I don't remember having conversations in board discussion about using them for something else. So the proposal all along had been to try to find something that funds that had been accrued over only, I have no idea how many years, but 20, 30 years, could be used in a way that lots of the students could access them, and that was the idea for the track.
So now we are up to item number 11, numbers 4 and 5, which are in an addendum. I need a motion for items number 4 and 5, which is passing both the budget and the tax levy. Do I have a motion? Mrs. Wooldridge, do I have a second? Mrs. McEwen? Mr. McLaughlin, may we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne? Yes. Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Dr. Dunton?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Abstaining.
Mrs. Wooldridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McEwen?
Yes.
Mrs. Swerner?
Yes.
Madam President?
And with that, we have a budget for yet another year. That's good. We're up to item number 12, the superintendent's report. There is one item. May I have a motion, please? Mrs. Wooldridge? A second. Dr. Dunton, thank you. Do you want to do a roll call, Mr. McCarrion, and then report out anything? Yeah, okay. Mr. McLaughlin?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Dr. Dunton?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Abstaining.
Mrs. Wooldridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McEwen?
Yes.
Mrs. Swerner?
Yes.
Madam President?
All right. Is there anything else to report out?
Could I ask a question about the HIV? Those were 8 items. I'm sure it took a long time to do an evaluation. None of them were HIV. Is that, are we getting better at it? Or?
Most of the time, if something's not considered HIB, it doesn't mean that it wasn't something that needed work. Oftentimes, it's something that is a violation of a code of conduct, or it may involve some counseling with the students, but it takes a very specific set of circumstances to meet the statutory definition of HIB. So I wouldn't characterize it as unusual.
Okay, we didn't see the other code of conduct.
Right.
Okay. So now we are up to item number 13, public comment on agenda item. Anyone who has commentary on any of the items that are on tonight's agenda, please come up, state your name and address. Make sure to sign in when you're done. Try to limit your comments to 5 minutes, please. Any public comments on agenda items? Going once? No. All right, though I'm going to close public comment on agenda items. And now we're up to the approval of minutes. May I have a motion, please? Anyone? Mrs. Richmond, second Mr. Fry. May we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. McEwen?
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Abstain.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Dr. Duncan?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Mrs. Swerner?
Yes.
Madam President?
We are now up to finance. It looks like there are 2 items. May I have a motion, please? Mrs. Woldridge, a second. Mr. Fry? Mrs. Woldridge, any comments before we vote?
No, Finance is meeting on May 17th, so I don't have a report.
Great. May we have a roll call, please, Mr.
I'd like to ask about item 2.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
Do that. So we have an opportunity to get $18,000 from New Jersey Schools Insurance Group for a safety grant, which will cover for us 2 things that have been on our list of to-do things. One has actually been done already, and so it would essentially reimburse us, which is over at the Cedar Hill Elementary School, where the frontage of the building, if you recall, is all glass, and you've got that glass corridor. What we did, of course, last summer was to add an exchange window so people would walk up to that, and we added a second storefront, if you will, so they have to be buzzed in to get into the building. But what we still wanted to do and didn't have in last summer's budget, but did this last fall, was to harden that glass. So we put a 3M window film laminate on there that is, it provides essentially, doesn't make it bulletproof, but what it does do is you could throw a trash can against it and it would crack, but it wouldn't break. You could hit it with a hammer and it would crack, but it wouldn't break. So it makes entry into the building very difficult. So we did that. We would pay for that. And the other thing that we're trying to get the contractor back out for, because we did a separate grant, which is not through a safety grant, but we did put LED lighting into the Cedar Hill School over the spring break. We also, through the safety grant, because it's much smaller in amount, we're able to apply for putting LED lighting on the outside of the Liberty Corner School, as well as putting LED lighting into the kitchen over there. So that gives us, of course, it's brighter, whiter light for the outside, so there's the safety factor there. And of course, in the kitchen, to have brighter, whiter light means we've probably got fewer food service workers potentially having an accident in there. And of course, there is, although it's not safety related, in both of those installations with LED lighting, we're looking at significant savings in terms of energy consumption and in terms of just replacement of those particular lighting units, because those lights have a significantly longer shelf life, or useful life, I should say, than the traditional ballast type of light that we have in there right now. So,
thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? May we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Dr. Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Abstain.
Mrs. Woldridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
Mrs. Swerner?
Yes.
Madam President?
We are now up to personnel. There are, I believe, 8 items. May I have a motion, please? Mrs. Richmond, may I have a second? Mrs. McEwen. Mrs. McEwen, do you have anything you want to report out before we vote?
Sure. Personnel met on Friday, May 5th. Most of the stuff is not stuff that I can report out on, but we did talk about summer guidance at WAMS in terms of scheduling and the staffing for that. As people, I think some people know, we're going to be moving to a new system next year, but this summer we're still using the old system. And we discussed personnel requests for next school year, which already were discussed during the budget presentation by Mr. Markarian. And then we have item on the agenda tonight, we have item number 7, which I think Mr. Markarian and Mr. Syed might speak on after we vote. Okay.
Are there any questions before we vote? Then may we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. McCune?
Yes.
Mrs. Woldridge?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Abstain.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Dr. Dunton?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Mrs. Swerner?
Yes.
Madam President?
I believe now we have Mr. Markarian and Mr. Syatt wanting to comment on item number 7. Is she hiding?
We want to say nice things about you, and we can't have you over there where we can't see you. So, with the action that the board just took, we have abolished the position of supervisor of guidance, starting in the 17-18 school year, and created the position of director of school counseling. And congratulations to Jillian Shadis, who is filling that position for us. So we are very excited. Thank you, Jillian, and thank you for staying late. So just a couple words about Jillian, and I was talking about you behind your back a little bit, Jillian, with Sean, and I felt guilty because he told me that all the things that I said about you, I need to say about a lot more people. So I apologize to those that I need to say this to, but Jillian has just been a tremendously hard worker for her time here in the district, and she's the kind of employee that any superintendent or principal or any administrator would covet having work for them. She's very dedicated, she stays late, she gets here early, and she takes really a lot of initiative. She's proactive, and she looks to do things to make things better without having to be asked to or told to. And that's the kind of person that you want to have working for you. So thank you so much, Jillian, and I really look forward to having you working in this role.
All right, so now we are up to policy. Is there anything to report?
Policy committee met today. We're going to report out at the next board meeting.
Oh, thank goodness. Curriculum committee, anything to report?
Yes, I apologize. There is. Okay, so we met way back on April 13th. Mr. Hunter went over some changes to the summer reading for 3 of the courses at the high school in grade 12 English Honors. Persepolis as a required reading selection will be replaced by Garden of the Beasts by Eric Larson. In grade 12 English CP, The Road will be replaced by Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. And in grade 11 AP English Language, 4 choice selections, I'm not going to bore you with all the titles, you'll be able to see them if you look them up, are being replaced by 1 required reading called The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. We discussed the conversation that actually took place at this meeting as well several weeks back regarding possible schedule changes at Ridge and William Annan. Mrs. Hudak has a committee who is investigating the possibility of a schedule change at William Annan, and there was some discussion by the curriculum committee as to could we revive the previously existing rotating drop schedule investigation, well, I guess schedule change investigation committee that was in existence last year prior to the concerns about the unit lunch and the facilities. Mr. Markarian stated that it is his preference that Mr. Kraus be here when that takes place, and he was kind enough to agree with board members' requests to investigate some of the concerns regarding questions that never got answered because the conversation stopped after the unit lunch kind of put up a roadblock. So there'll be some investigation into what impact science labs, music programs, special ed schedules, clubs, option 2, testing integrity, and tutorials, what impact schedule change might have on that. The unit lunch was also discussed, and it can be done, but there could be compromises that have to be made. We also discussed the topics for the upcoming climate survey. The curriculum committee unanimously agreed to use the Blaustein survey from Rutgers for the part 1, which is the non-customized portion of the survey, and I guess we'll be seeing more in the coming weeks as that gets finalized. There was also discussion about the K-2 homework policy. Some of that has been heard, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much, but I know the regulation went out in Mr. Markarian's letter that he sent to the community last week. The regulation covers in detail what the homework policy is at all grade levels. There was conversation about what's appropriate for kindergarten through second grade. That was the specific discussion here. Agreement was reached that the guidelines should be met, and that should be across the buildings. And the letter indicates what happened there. Additionally, with so much on the curriculum committee agenda over the recent months and that list growing, Mr. Heineman, or Dr. Heineman, pardon me, and Mr. Markarian were kind enough to agree with the curriculum committee to add some special meetings on specific topics where we can have a group of different administrators or instructors from the buildings, different buildings in one room to discuss maybe all elementary concerns that the committee has compiled or various other topics that relate to one another and a regular committee meeting just doesn't allow time for. Other than that, the last item was a discussion regarding the Ridge High School STEAM program. Board members inquired about the interviews for next year. Those results weren't available just yet. There was additional discussion that we do have some students not returning from the first year for the second year for various reasons. I just learned one is because a student won't be returning to Ridge, so that makes sense. Board members expressed additional concern about future reductions and what it would mean to the program, so there'll be additional conversation about that at one of the future special topics meetings. Our next meeting is this Friday, the 12th.
Any questions for Mrs. Gray?
I'm going to ask them later.
I will look forward to your call, Mike.
Anything? All right. Advocacy, anything to report?
Yes.
Yay.
Advocacy met on May 1st, and we gave a brief update of the April 17th Board of Ed meeting and mentioned that the K-5 interventionist past, present, future presentation, as well as the class size report are online. We talked about George Scott coming to speak to the parents in our community on May 17th at 7 p.m. at the Ridge PAC, and he will be talking about, he's a statewide resource coordinator for the Traumatic Loss Coalition for Youth, and will be presenting on recovering from suicide and other sudden losses. We talked about the last meeting of the year will be June 5th, and the current PTO presidents as well as the new incoming presidents are invited to come and attend that meeting. We mentioned that on May 11th, there will be, Dr. Heineman is going to be doing a STEAM presentation at William Mannon at 9 a.m. And Mr. Markarian talked to the PTO presidents about coming to the June 5th advocacy meeting with about 3 to 4 curricular-related topics so that we can brainstorm some topics, curriculum presentations for the district and make better use of the supervisor's time. And we are inviting Dr. Heineman to come to that meeting as well to hear their suggestions. And we brainstormed with the PTO presidents for the social emotional climate survey and asked for their opinion with regard to the parent-specific survey. So each of them gave us ideas from the high school, middle school, and elementary school. And Mr. Markarian took their feedback and has created some questions with regard to that. And there were 2 other things. There was just a request from the PTO presidents to let them know as soon as possible about the 4 early dismissal days for the 2017 and 18 calendar so that they can make their plans and calendars for next year already. And we just talked briefly, very briefly, about teaching coping skills and how more intentional time could be slotted to teach students how to cope, deal with difficult situations, coping with stress, social media, etc. And our next meeting is June 5th.
Any questions for Mrs. Richmond? Sure. Mr. Byrne?
I have school climate survey from the parents, and down at the meeting. Is this part of advocacy, or is this?
That's the climate survey I'm going to be doing.
Oh, it's a survey.
Yep.
So no results.
No, that hasn't gone out
It's
yet.
just
It's
a
just to the
draft
board.
for our feedback
Just
prior
draft
to it going out.
so far.
Any other questions, comments? I just want to say I love the fact that there's going to be a coordinated effort for the curriculum forums next year, that all the schools can participate, and it's going to be on the calendar. So thank you for leading the effort with that. Liaison reports, are there any this evening? Okay.
I just wanted to mention one thing.
Okay.
I'm not doing my municipal alliance report, but I did want to mention, since the senior prom is coming up,
May
that
19th.
the sixth graders are going to be doing senior letters for the seniors. Yeah, about not drinking and driving and common sense like that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be possible to get a sample letter or two to read out at one of our board meetings? I think that's a great effort.
I might be able to.
Yeah, I would love to hear one or two. Thank you. We're now up to public comment. This is the time where the public can comment to the board on anything. State your name and address, sign in, 5 minutes. I think by now you all get it.
I guess I'll say, Michelle Coppola, 44 Vanderveer Drive, and I really love you guys, or I would not have stayed to read this to you. I'm so tired. But I stand here tonight to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the gift you've given this district. I hope the community understands that the letter we received on Friday represents the first time that I can remember ever that the administration has directly addressed many of these policies with the teachers and parents. So I'd like to thank the board for hearing the community's concerns about the amount of homework, the issues with grades not getting posted into Home Access Center, as well as the policy about homework over recess periods or long-term projects being due before a week back. I'm confident that the repeated expression of concern by the community and the support we have gotten from the Board of Education has led to this amazing gift from Mr. Markarian. I cannot state more firmly to the community that Mr. Markarian has paved the way to help improve communication with our amazing teachers. If there's ever concern that your child is spending more time on homework than is in the policy, Mr. Markarian has made it so easy for you to familiarize yourself with the guidelines. He's made it clear that the teachers have reviewed the guidelines. You simply have to encourage your child to mention to the teacher that the homework is taking longer than is expected, or the parent can easily reach out to express concern that their individual child seems to be spending too much time. I cannot urge parents more strongly to reach out. I'm pretty confident that you'll be thrilled with the response. Mr. Markarian went even further. He reminded all of us that if we are not comfortable with the resolution, to just reach out to the head of the department. Mr. Markarian's desire to listen and make immediate adjustments was crystal clear this past recess when he was advised that teachers had mistakenly assigned long-term projects due the Monday after break. He quickly implemented a resolution and had project due dates adjusted. The one other topic that did not get addressed in this most recent letter is the one regarding the fact that district believes that tests, not finals, are the property of the students. If you believe that your child would benefit from having their test to study for the AP exam or for any other reason, just have your student ask the teacher. If that does not work, reach out to the head of the department. I am sure Mr. Markarian will continue to go over the policies with the staff, and parents will simply have to point it out. Again, I have to say that I'm thrilled for the district. I truly think this is an amazing first step to help alleviate items that should never have been stressful. And with this outstanding Board of Education and Mr. Markarian, these issues will hopefully be put to rest. It is clear we are all on the same team, and the ground rules have been pointed out. Parents keep speaking out. They are listening. Thank you again.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment this evening?
Hello, I'm Elaine D'Addario from 46 Dykeman Place, and I just wanted to talk to you guys about Challenge Day and ask you if that's something that you would put into the curriculum or somehow put into the community. I think it's important. I was told that it was in at one point through the Municipal Alliance, but I think it'd be important for our students. So they have different options. I don't know if you know about Challenge Day or what it actually means, but I can give you a little bit of information if some of you don't. They have Challenge Day assemblies for the whole school. They'll have graduation Challenge Day. They have sports teams Challenge Days and Challenge Days for faculty and students. So I'm going to leave you with some paperwork. You're shaking your head, so I'm hoping others do know about Challenge Day if you don't, or programs like it. I hope you'd consider it, so that's really all I'm asking of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? All right, then I'm going to close public comment. Thank you, Mrs. D'Addario. I know that Challenge Day has been pointed out to our social emotional task force or committee, if you will, and it's on the list of things for consideration. Okay, good. So now we are up to board forum, and I want to go first this time. I just want to once again give a shout out to all the incredible candidates who applied for the vacancy tonight. I am incredibly impressed. You're all still hanging, or almost all of you are still hanging in tonight. I also want to emphasize most of our meetings do not go this long, but if you want to continue to get a feel for the work we're doing, you are welcome to join us every other Monday night, 7 p.m., not usually this long. You're also welcome to reach out to any of us on the board if you have any more questions, because it's just so heartwarming to see this level of interest, and we want to keep you all on the hook for the future. So that's my 2 cents. Are there any other comments for board forum? Mr. Byrne?
If you see me going up and down the steps, you know that there's going to be at least one board position eventually opening up soon. Please, I'm very impressed with the candidates. Please keep on coming to the meetings. I think it'd make a great contribution to the board in the future. So thank you for coming, and please keep on coming and keep on having an interest, because I think you'd make a great addition to the board. Thank you.
Any other board forum? Dr. Dutton?
I just want to say that it was tough. Everyone who applied for this position made it tough tonight, and I want to congratulate Jen Gorn on her addition to the board and wish her well in her new endeavor. Joining us.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, I just want to say thank you very much. I was actually really, really surprised that you guys said my name. But I'm excited. I think this is great. I think we're going to have, we're going to make do really great things up here. And everyone who was applying for this position, I really am shocked. But I'm excited because I know that the more that opens up, that we will have more and more great people who are willing to step in and do the work that has to be done. So I'm grateful, and I'm excited to be a positive influence on the Board of Ed and not have to stand down there. And coming to the meetings does help, I just want to FYI.
It certainly will make our public comment sections a little shorter. Are there any other comments for board forum? If not, Mrs. Korn, we'd be honored if you make your first motion ever. We need a motion for adjournment. Mrs. Korn, do I have a second? Surely, Mr. Fry. We are adjourned. Thank you.